Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and welcome to Prog Chattery 777. We're talking about Max Webster, and we're starting with their self-titled debut album, Max Webster. This was released in 1976, and it is a phenomenal little debut album, I must say. Max Webster always gets compared to Rush because, of course, they were very close bands in the late 70s, both being from Canada and touring together and being on the same label. And if you were to compare Max Webster's debut album with Rush's debut album, I think this is a far better album, personally. Obviously Rush's debut is a good record. It's one of those classic 70s albums of just, straight up heavy blues rock. But that's all it is. Max Webster's debut is an incredibly eclectic and diverse collection of songs. And, for a debut album by a young band, it's quite impressive, actually. So the lineup on this album, the original Max Webster lineup, we get Kim Mitchell on lead vocals and guitar, Paul Kersey on drums, Mike Tilka on bass and backup vocals, and of course Terry Watkinson on keyboards. As I said in the intro video, I think the biggest thing with Max Webster's sound is the guitar playing of Kim Mitchell and the keyboards of Terry Watkinson. They form a really good balance between the two, and then it's the rhythm section that anchors the whole thing together. Of course, the unsung fifth member, Pai Dubois, is also present on this album. His bizarre lyrics are in fine form. And, what more can be said? It's just a great, staple of 70s songs of different styles. Like I said, it's not just one specific thing. It really is all over the shop. There's some great ballads on here. There's some good heavy riffs on here. It's got a kind of a prog epic towards the end. And there's a great jazziness to a lot of the tracks, too. I think that comes from Terry Watkinson. There's some really, really tasteful, electric piano solos on here, which are just phenomenal. They're just great. What more can be said? You should definitely check this album out. I really dig the album cover. This is kind of a legendary Max Webster thing, the image of the strange heads on the little conveyor belt here. I'm not too familiar with how beer is distributed in other places, but this is in Canada. This is at the beer store. When you get your beer, they toss the beer down these little rolly conveyor belt things, and this is a reference to one of the first songs on the album, Hangover, because they're happy, and then they go through here, and that looks like a hangover song about partying. So that's quite entertaining, and I like the back image too. You got to pour your Max Webster into your brain, and you'll be happy. So let's try and digest the songs. I try and keep these videos relatively short because, unfortunately, Max Webster is not the most well-known band in the world, but they should be well-known. And if my videos are good for anything, I hope it means more people discover this wonderful Canadian band, Max Webster. Also notable, before I go into the tracks, there's nobody in the band named Max Webster. I think they did pick the name out from a phone book. I think I read that somewhere, and they just, oh, that's kind of a cool name. But it also did lead to everyone saying, oh, we'd like to speak to Max, please. There is no Max. I like to think of it as like Max Webster, like your maximum Webster. You're going more Webster than you could possibly go. It's the maximum. Anyway, let's stop being distracted and get to the tracks. So the album opens with Hangover, one of the classic Max Webster tracks, very, very well-known song. Obviously, it's about having a hangover. There's some great lyrics, some very bizarre lyrics. Alka-Seltzer, Tang and a 50. It's all over. I've got a hangover. That Pai Dubois bizarre thing. And of course, Max Webster started out as a bar band, right? So they're playing all these clubs, and everyone's getting very, very drunk. And Hangover, being about hangovers, is the ultimate song to finish off with, just to remind everyone you are all going to be hungover in the morning. But yeah, great song. It's a little, for such a famous Max Webster song, it's not very typical of Max Webster, in truth. It's very guitar dominated. It's all about that riff. The keyboards are there. There's a little kind of, a slight, subtle keyboard solo towards the middle of the track, but it doesn't have that equal balance between guitar and keyboard. But hey, still a great track for sure. And the big ending, which is great. It's excellent track. Move on to track 2, one of my favorite Max Webster songs, actually. We got Here Among the Cats. Now, this is much more typical of Max Webster because we do get to hear lots of those great keyboards, courtesy of Mr. Terry Watkinson. But yeah, just a great track. It's very jazzy. It's kind of got there's moments of this great jazzy feeling, which is fantastic. And I mean, it's not like a burgeoningly heavy type thing. Like I said, Max Webster was never as heavy as like Deep Purple, Sabbath, or Zeppelin or anything like that. But damn, is it a groovy song. And again, it's all about those lyrics. They're just so bizarre. Should have been a doctor. I got Rollin' Rock shoes. I got TV blues. I keep telling everybody. I keep telling everyone should have been a doctor. There's better lyrics by Pi, but there's just something about it. It's just, what the hell is he on about? Great guitar solo. We were introduced to Kim Mitchell's phenomenal guitar playing. He's one of Canada's best. He's up there with Alex Lifeson. He's a phenomenal guitarist, and again, terribly underrated guitar player. Kim Mitchell he's a fantastic player. Great keyboard solo as well. And then like that little bridge section. So Max, very Max, typical of the band. Great stuff. Move on to track 3, Blowing the Blues Away. This is much more of a pop-oriented sort of a song. This was written by Terry Watkinson, so no Pi Dubois lyrics on this. It's entirely written by Watkinson, and it's a great little song. Not quite as good as the first 2 tracks, but there's plenty to like about the track. I really like the little bridge section. That's kind of a cool thing. There's still some great lyrics on there. Terry Watkinson's a great lyricist. I liked you better in your rags, Cinderella, 'cause that's when you like to play. Yeah, definitely a poppy sort of thing. You can hear the Beatles influence for sure. Yeah, great track. Track 4, Summer Turning Blue. Now this is quite different, and this is where you get to see that eclecticism. It's a very stark intro, just these little piano notes. It almost feels like a piece of theater at times. It's not one of the best tracks on the album, but it shows the diversity, and it gives the album a nice flow. The first 3 tracks are a little higher energy, and then this is just stark and mysterious and bit melancholy. There's definitely a melancholy to it. But great track, definitely helps with the flow of the album. Then we get to track 5, the final song on side 1, Toronto Tontos. One of the definitive Max Webster tracks. This is just fantastic. It really is bizarre. And this is one of those songs where it's like, there is no other band on the planet, before or since, that sounded quite like that. It's just strange. We get that big guitar riff at the beginning, and that's traded off between the keyboard with this really harsh, it's this harsh sound, and it's very, very strange. And then the lyrics come in, the first verse kicks in, and we get those really kind of low muttered vocals from Kim Mitchell. Toronto, Tontos, Vegas, babies, transient. Free publicity is not free when it's public. Put down a little life from a morning cosmic. Back to the Pi Dubois lyrics there. And it kind of trades off between that and that. Trades off between that a couple of times, and then towards the end we get the famous, I think it is Mexican Kim, or maybe he's trying to be French Kim Mitchell, I'm not really sure, but it goes into this kind of jazzy little thing at the end, and he goes, I got no cigarettes on me, no fire on me, no cigarettes, no matches. Which is, again, just bizarre, and it's so irreverent. I remember as a kid I used to love that, because it's just like, what? There's a great silliness to it, and even though they're phenomenal players, they're having fun with their music. They're not taking it too seriously, which is great. Got a great little keyboard solo towards the end there with that weird little section, and there's an accordion in there as well, I believe. It must be a proper accordion that they have. But just a fantastic track. One of the definitive Max Webster songs, and probably one of my favorites on the album. That and Here Among the Cats. Just fantastic. We flip the record over, and we get Coming Off the Moon. This is the first of 4 moon-based tracks. Pi Dubois had an obsession with the moon, and I guess that's why everyone called him a loony. Lunatic, or whatever you want to say. But Coming Off the Moon's a great track. One of the heavier songs on the album. We get that nice big guitar riff. And yeah, it's a good song. There's nothing too special about it, but it is a good track. You know, it's a good heavy rocking track. We get some nice background vocals. I love, I love, I love, I love Claudine, yeah, or whatever it is they're singing, something like that. There's some weird lyrics too that I mean probably wouldn't come across so good today, but the one line that I always remembered for whatever reason, it's just the way, because Kim Mitchell's got this reverb on his voice that comes back, but the one line, turn up the sky to father music, everything below you is cancer. It's just a weird line. It's like, what does that mean? But the words sound good, and it's got, you know, when he sings it, it's got this, oh, he's being serious, but it's just weird words, I guess, isn't it? Or maybe there is some underlying seriousness behind it. I'm not too sure. It's irreverent, though, one way or another. Moving on, the next track, track 2 of side 2, Only Your Nose Knows. Again, really good song, but it's very similar to Coming Off the Moon. In fact, the introductory riff on Only Your Nose Knows is basically the bridge from Coming Off the Moon. So I always found that a little bit strange, but it's still a good song. It's a very unusual arrangement. Again, I said before, there's nothing generic about Max Webster, including their arrangements. You know, it feels like they're just halfway through a verse and then they switch to another section of the song, then back to another, and it's all over the place. You know, it is quirky and eccentric and very, very cool. But again, not one of my favorite songs on the album. I like Coming Off the Moon a bit more. We're nearing the end of the album now. We get Summer's Up. Really good song. Another great track. Very jazzy. This is one of the jazziest things that they ever did, perhaps. But it's very mellow, and I've always enjoyed it. I love that little theme at the start. And a really good vocal performance by Kim Mitchell. He's a great singer as well. And his singing changed later on. Of course, he had a successful solo career in the 1980s and 90s. And he sang much more melodically. But Max Webster, he had this way of kind of shouting. He's still a great singer, and he's still very much on key. But I mean, he had this, you know, a very aggressive singing style and a very low voice, completely different from Geddy Lee if we're going to compare those two again. But there's great comparison to be made on the final album, which we'll get to in a bit, of course. But yeah, Summer's Up's a great track, and it's got a really highlight keyboard moment for me. I love the keyboard solo on Summer's Up. So jazzy and so tasteful and classy. Yeah, Terry Watkinson, phenomenal keyboard player. And then we make our way to the final track of the album, Lily. Now this song was written exclusively by Kim Mitchell. He wrote the music and the lyrics, and he didn't really write many lyrics after this. I'm not sure why. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Lily lyrics. They're fine. I get the sense that he's trying to imitate Pi Dubois' lyrical style a little bit, but that's fine. It's a funny thing with Lily, because it's the song that I should like on the album most, because it is very much the proggy song. You know, it's almost 8 minutes long. There's lots of different sections to it. There's a great drama. You know, I love, you know, diddlin' 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 ding 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 boom. There's some great sections, and it really is the prog song of the album. But for whatever reason, it's never stuck with me quite like, you know, Here Among the Cats or Coming Off the Moon, Summer's Up, especially Toronto Tontos. Who could forget Toronto Tontos? So that's very strange. Every time I listen to it, it's like, wow, Lily's a great track. But if I'm out of a Max Webster mood and I'm thinking of highlight songs, Lily doesn't usually come up for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, but that's that. But it wraps up the album, and there you have it, Max Webster's debut album. I would argue this is a far better album than Rush's debut album, just being totally honest, and that's just my personal opinion. But I think it's far more diverse and eclectic, and you know, it's a band, you know, fully in control of what they're doing, and you know, very adventurous, and they're looking for what else they can do, and you know, they display a great diversity of styles, and you know, none of the songs sound the same. So as far as I'm concerned, that's a phenomenal debut record. And I mean, any album with Toronto Tontos on it is a winner for me. And it's the best. Toronto Tontos is the best example of their quirkiness. But yeah, that should wrap it all up. Thank you very much for watching, especially if you haven't heard of Max Webster before. I know it may test your patience if you are watching this. But you know, the best solution is go out and buy the new box set that just came out, The Party, because you get all 5 of their studio albums. You get 1 live album, and or 1 official live album, and then 1 bootleg live album, and Kim Mitchell's debut solo EP. So if you haven't heard of Max Webster, go out and buy The Party, because you get everything in 1 epic box. And on that note, I will say thank you very much. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos. You will see me in the future. Farewell.